Nigerian President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu is expected to be sworn in on the 29th of May. Tinubu, who won the last presidential elections, has been at the center of Nigerian politics for more than 2 decades, and a lot is expected of his presidency. After playing opposition leader for 16 years, he was the national leader of the ruling All Progressive Congress for the last 8 years. These positions put him at the center of massive expectations, especially as his antecedents and quality are put to test in Nigeria's biggest political office. He also succeeds a national leader whose performance is seen in different lights by Nigerians. Tonight on Politics HQ, we will discuss Tinubu's presidency and what Nigerians should expect. Now, joining me for this analysis, I have Mary Ogwiji, human rights activist and lawyer, joins us live from Abuja. I also have Ambassador Olusiji Aina, a board member of the United States Africa Trade Council. And I also have Deji Ajare, a public affairs analyst, joins us live from Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us at Politics HQ. I'd like to begin with Deji Ajare. Now, Deji, looking at the recent presidential elections in Nigeria, could you provide an analysis of the factors that led to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu's victory, as well as the controversies surrounding it?
Well, thank you very much for having me tonight. I think for me, beyond just the fact that, look, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu he's been, a player in Nigerian politics for quite a long time, and he's not just been there, he's quite devoted to the politics of the country. And so, for me, he's had this coming all along. He's been working on it, planning towards it, and quite naturally, he's also created friends across quite a lot of states across the country, just as he has also created enemies. But he has had alliances. He has had people that he has impacted in one way or the other. So quite naturally, he was able to muzzle up the political connection, and as well as having a very huge finance backing for the political campaigns. We all know that in Nigeria, campaigns require quite a lot of funds. And when you compare him with his other 2 major contenders, or 3, as I was want to say, you will find that he was better positioned to run a campaign. Beyond that, I would also say there are factors regarding the division between the PDP that led to the exit of the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter, also deeply affected the chances of both Mr. Peter Obi and Atiku Abubakar. So quite naturally, he had a better chance at it, and by and large, I think those are the issues on the face of it.
Thank you very much, Deji. Now, Mary, what do you believe are the major challenges that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu will face as he assumes the presidency of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, considering the doubts many Nigerians have about his ability to bring about the necessary change?
Okay. Personally, I don't feel like the doubts that Nigerians
sorry, Deji, the question is directed to Mary. Sorry. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mary.
Okay. All right. Personally, I feel the doubt that Nigerians have generally about the president-elect would not in any way deter him from acting. In fact, it's even an opportunity for him to show that he is different and he can be different. I think most of the challenges come from the the situation that we have on ground now. The country is at the risk of collapse, like we are just at the edge. So any mistake from his part, where he fails to act, or where he fails to appoint the right persons to be put in for the right positions, or where he actually decides to toe the line of his predecessors and do very little or nothing for the country, that is only when he would actually have challenges. I feel the doubts that Nigerians actually have about him is an opportunity for him to show that he can be different.
Thank you very much, Mary. Ambassador Aina, as we speak right now, there are cases at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal challenging the victory of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the polls. Now, in your expert opinion, what specific strategies should the president-elect employ to restore public faith in the government and address the legitimacy concerns that have plagued Nigeria's political landscape?
Again, thank you so much for having me. And I think the panelists have touched on some of the issues. But I expect that immediately Asiwaju will get to work. There are quite a number of things that needed to be done. There are low-hanging fruits that needed to yield immediate result that he needed to address. I'm sure by the time he touched base on the issue of the economy, the forex regime, looking at trade policy, looking at the issue of students, ASU strike, most importantly, the deregulation of the oil sector that is coming in. By the time he addressed some of those issues and then create more like quick wins, then I'm sure the entire Nigerian will begin to have a rethink as to whether to give him a chance for the next 4 years. And I'm so sure that Nigerians are quite good at doing that. The moment they see those low-hanging fruits, those immediate results dropping, they will run around support, around him. And I can assure you that all of those issues in the court will become a thing of the past.
But you do understand that it's taking over at a very difficult time in our nationhood. You look at the high level of debt, you look at large-scale theft of crude oil, and some are even wondering that why would anyone want to be president of Nigeria at this time in our nation? Do you see those as obstacles to him achieving his campaign promises, Ambassador?
No, not exactly. I know our debt profile is quite high. At the moment, we are talking about something in the neighborhood of about 80 trillion. And I'm sure that Asiwaju is quite aware of all of these challenges. The oil issue is also there. But I'm sure he's going to move away from oil. We are going to look at how to increase the IGR, not necessarily by putting burden on the Nigerians, but in a way to look at non-oil sectors that we can drive. Nigeria is so blessed with abundance of mineral resources. Nigeria is so blessed among communities of nations when it comes to commodities and all of that. It will begin to look inward and looking away from that oil. Not like it won't address some issues around it, but there are quick wins, that it can address, of oil sector in terms of agriculture, in terms of mineral resources that can give us quick wins in the next 6 months to 1 year. And those things will bring about some kind of dividends of democracy the way we have never seen before. I'm sure Asiwaju is quite aware, he's a strategist, and he'll be able to address those issues very quickly to yield a quick win that Nigerians will be able to applaud him and know that the business is not as business as usual. But something has come to change, and I can assure you of that.
Thank you, Ambassador. Now, Deji, back to you. Beyond rhetoric, what concrete actions do you think Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu should take to demonstrate the capacity of his administration to effectively govern and tackle the very pressing issues facing Nigeria today?
Yes, you see, I quite agree. Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu is inheriting a country that is at the precipice. The country is very heavily divided at the moment, of course, owing in part to the policies of the outgoing government and then, of course, the politics of the last election, the last national elections. And so it's a burden on Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu to, as soon as he comes in, set in motion strategies to promote national reconciliation and heal the divisions within the entities in Nigeria. He must encourage, some dialogues and engage marginalized groups, or at least foster inclusivity to promote national cohesion, particularly in appointments, starting with the leadership of the National Assembly and appointments of other political office holders. These will be like the short-term issues he's going to have to address. And of course, we still have the issue of insecurity, which is still festering, particularly in the northern part of the country. He must quickly, as soon as he comes in, find ways to, enhance security measures to combat insurgency, terrorism, banditry, kidnapping, and all these other issues, security issues that are affecting the country. It requires collaborations with neighboring countries or with other foreign, that should be done. And then it must also focus its attention on the law enforcement agencies in improving their intelligence capabilities to ensure that this level of insecurity is brought down to the barest minimum. Because without these issues being tackled, a lot of other issues like the economy, like agriculture, education, and a lot of other issues are going to be affected. And I think one of the other short-term issues that he must also quickly look at are fiscal issues. Of course, he's going to be inheriting a budget, but they must also look at how to put in strategies to ensure fiscal discipline, prevent budget deficits. We must also implement a very transparent and accountable financial management system. Remember that he has a baggage that he came in through, the baggage of corruption. So it is important that he comes in and make proof to people, like Mary said, it is an opportunity for him to show to Nigerians that indeed he has the capacity and he has the tenacity to hold the system and reform the entire system that he met on ground. And of course, like Ambassador Olusiji had said, it is important that they start putting in measures to diversify the economy, reducing reliance on oil, not totally abandoning oil, but reducing reliance on oil, encouraging the agricultural sector and manufacturing sector. And of course, in terms of education, government must focus its attention on education from primary to tertiary level. I am aware that about 46 billion UBEC funds have still not been accessed by the states because they are unable to meet with the matching grants. And if the state governors are unable to be creative in coming up with their own matching portfolio, then the federal government must consider it as its obligation to creatively help them raise these funds. The reason is because Nigerians essentially see all of the problems with the country as emanating from the federal level. Of course, you and I know that primary and basic education is essentially it's under the state and local government administrations.
Thank you, Deji. Now, Mary, earlier I did speak about the fact that as we speak, there's a presidential election petition tribunal that has been constituted. Now, how much of a distraction do you think that will be? The Constitution, as the Electoral Act says, they have to decide within 180 days. And in the history of Nigeria, never has there been a presidential election that the Supreme Court has overturned the verdict. Now, how much of a distraction do you think that will be, knowing that you have this case hanging over your head to his presidency and his ability to deliver in this first few months as president of the Republic when he's sworn in on Monday?
I don't see the case, I don't see the court case as a distraction at all, especially bearing in mind that he came in through an electoral process. Once he feels that he actually came in through a free and fair means and he did the right thing to get into power, I don't think that should actually be a threat to his administration. I feel he should just go ahead, let the judiciary do her thing, because the courts actually use the facts on ground in order to get to make his decisions.
Yes.
So I don't see that as affecting him in any way. If the facts on ground actually, at the end of the day, if weighing the whole facts on ground, the court decides that he actually did merit being our president, then he continues to be president. So I don't see it as deterring him. In fact, I expect that immediately he gets into power, he should swing into action, because we are already at the edge. He should start by appointing the right hands, not just based on people who actually supported him during his election, but based on competency. We need competent hands at this time. We don't just need like a support group or a support team being compensated with political positions and appointments. We need the country to be at its best at this time. We need the best hands to actually handle things. And also his campaign promises, I think he should swing into action with his campaign promises already once he gets into power. He doesn't need to keep waiting for the courts to make the decision. The judiciary is different from the executive. He runs the executive arm, so he should allow the judiciary do their thing. And the most important, the most important thing is that there should not be any hindrance to the democracy at all, because this government is for the people. The democracy is for the people, is by the people, and it ought to be for the benefit of the people. And the rule of law is actually the supremacy of law over everybody, and nobody is actually above the law. So I just feel he should run the country like he ought to, allow the judiciary to do their thing without hindrances. And I don't see the judiciary, especially bearing in mind that he came in through a free and fair means, I don't see it as a hindrance at all.
Now, staying with you, Mary, you did touch on the point of, his team and getting straight to work. The current president of Nigeria, President Muhammadu Buhari, took about 6 months before he named ministers. And I do recall in the run-up to the presidential elections, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu speaking at the Royal Institute of International Affairs in the United Kingdom, Chatham House. He was asked questions, and then he delegated those questions to some of the members of his team. Some thought, that was ingenious, that this man knows how to delegate. So looking at his antecedents and the way he operates from his history, do you expect him to name ministers as soon as he can, or are we going to have a 6-month wait? And do you expect him and his team to hit the ground running? Because Nigerians have a lot of expectations.
Yes, I actually expect that he should hit the ground rolling already, because we have, after the declaration of the election, I think there's been more than 2 months already. I don't think he starts down folding his arms and waiting for him to actually be inaugurated before he swings into action. This time already, because a lot of things, by now he should have been thinking of his ministers during this span of time. Should have been thinking of his ministers, because we don't really need to leave that amount of space for any, we don't need to leave that amount of space, because just like he's coming in to take power immediately after President Muhammadu Buhari is going out, so also those other ministries cannot be left vacant. We cannot leave our ministries vague. We need to keep things running. And for the country to run, these ministries have to be occupied. Because like I said, the country is at its edge. We don't want any excuses at this time. And that is why, because a lot of hopes are actually hanging on him. And he really needs to do a lot to pick the right hands, because we need to strengthen our institution. Most times when I hear people talk about, Nigeria being a government thing and it's almost impossible for it to work because it's a government thing and it's a general thing. I use the banks, for example. If you look at the banks and you look at the private sector, they are doing very well. And that's to show that there's a management lacuna. So once the right person once we have the right head, the body is going to follow. Because the banks are actually made up of Nigerians. And you cannot tell me that, the people are corrupt and that's the reason why we have the situation like this. The banks too are made up of Nigerians who are also corrupt persons, but they are being manned and they are being headed by persons that see
checks
the bank
and balances.
as their personal business. Yes, they are good checks and balances. So also you see there are security cameras and everything. So every check and balance needed to make the country to move forward has to be put in place. We need to strengthen our institutions so that they can work for us. We need that at this time more than ever before. So I don't want him making any excuses. We need to swing into action immediately. The social contract between the government and her people with that. The government has to make sure that the basic amenities such as security, employment, infrastructure, and amongst others, education, all these things have to be put in place. A lot of people's hopes are hanging on the social contract between the government and the people. People can't really fly the road. People can't really fly the roads the way they ought to because of the situation of the country. So we don't need to leave any space at all. The ministries need to keep working. It needs to get on board immediately.
Thank you very much, Mary. Now, Ambassador Aina, this new administration that will be birthed in a few days, the Tinubu and Shettima campaign ran on the mantra of renewed hope. We do recall the Hope 93 with Chief M.K. Abiola, the late Chief M.K. Abiola, and also President Muhammadu Buhari's first term in 2015. Nigerians were very hopeful, and going down the line, they've seen that, you know, politicians make promises, and a lot of them are not satisfied with the way things are 8 years later. So having this in mind, when it comes to protecting people from vulnerabilities in the social contract, like Mary mentioned, between the government and the people, protecting the people from vulnerabilities such as political, social, economic, and ecological threats, what policies or initiatives do you believe the incoming government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu should prioritize in order to ensure the well-being and security of Nigerians? What should be their priority areas of focus?
Again, thank you so much for having me. I think by and large, my colleagues here have actually highlighted quite a number of things that needed to be done and done quickly. But in terms of policy, you know, I keep saying that Nigeria is practically more maybe like the headquarters of policies in the world. We have all manner of, you know, social economic policies that have been made since 1960. Some of them have been totally abandoned, jettisoned without even consideration for, you know, how it's going to impact on the people. But most importantly, I think one of the things that the incoming president needs to do to be able to, you know, reiterate the importance of the hope mantra that he talked about is to begin to separate some of the policies that have been modeled on. For example, it needs to begin to look at the economic policy, the trade policy. They are all modeled up in one. And this conversation is not a new one. You know, at the UN General Assembly last year, we had this conversation in Washington, D.C. And most importantly, we need to begin to look at the trade policy that will be driven by an expert in a way we can begin to see the relationship of Nigeria and other countries of the world in terms of how we do trade. And secondly, when we look at the economic policy, we don't want to, you know, be rhetorical about some of those things, but there are things that can be seen, things that can be felt very, very quickly. And the president must do something in a way that the people, that is Nigerians, can begin to feel the impact of those economic policy. A very quick one. You know, we're told that by June 1, there will be total deregulation. And if you have total deregulation of the petroleum downstream sector, then we're going to have skyrocket, you know, inflation. The cost of food items will go up, the cost of transportation will go up, and all of that indices will be a major issue. Even if you look at the statistics that was released by Bureau of Statistics recently, food inflation seems to be the highest on that number. So we must begin to look at policies that is driven by the incoming president in a way that can soften and cushion the effect of that total deregulation if it ever takes place. Because again, this outgoing administration has perfected every measures to totally deregulate the downstream, you know, petroleum sector. If that is done, then it's not about the palliative of $800 million of sending 5,000 naira to 40 million Nigerians that can solve the problem. We must begin to look at policies that can affect both the people in the public and the private sector, even the people at the bottom of the pyramid. So you must begin to crowd in the development partners, all of those international, you know, financial institutions to come together to see what they can do, especially some of them who work in household economic strengthening and do some work, you know, around all of that, to see how they can quickly do certain things that can help, you know, Nigerians, you know, get the assurance from government that they will not again be maneuvered as it has happened in the last 8 years. Another very important point is that we must begin to look at this budget. And I am happy that Barrister Ajare talked about, you know, financial transparency, because don't forget that this budget is made by the outgoing president. So he has little or no influence over what has been done in the current budget. So we should begin to see some executive orders, you know, in a way that can help some of those policies that will help our people. So things must be done very quickly to touch the people at the bottom of the pyramid. And very importantly, there are things that you can do quickly that can have ripple effects on other things. We talk about security. Today, a lot of our people cannot go to farms because they cannot produce. We have good number of states that can feed the entire West African country. And you must assure them when it comes to security, things must change differently, that people can go to farm and farm in numbers. And then number two, we must begin to bring in the issue of technology, the artificial intelligence, to aid and to support the farmers so that they don't necessarily have to crowd in with people on the farm, whereas they can be threatened by kidnapping and all of that. We are not using a lot of artificial intelligence to drive our agricultural sector. We need to do that and do that very quickly. And number three, we must begin to look at the mineral resources sector. Now, lithium is the way out. If you listen to Dr. Additional, at the ongoing African Development Bank conference, you will hear him talk about that we need about more than $2 trillion to be able to harness that sector. Nigeria must play that leadership role and assure the international community or the international partners that we have what it takes, because Nigeria is blessed with lithium, uranium, mention any of those things all across the country. We have the data, we have the statistics. We must begin to harness it. And lastly, enough of exporting our local and raw materials out of this country. The president must make an executive order or policy that will help or that will attract, processing plants to come into the country. We need to process in this country. If the process is going to create jobs, we're going to have more money, we're going to have more trade, and all of that needs to happen very quickly. So that assurance must be given to Nigerians, and that sense of belonging must be created in a way that they will know that this country belongs to all of us. And the assurance of that old matriarch, they will begin to, emanate or resuscitate in the life of the people in a way that they can believe in this coming administration, that they really mean business this time around.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Aina. This is a fine place to go on a break. We still have quite a lot to unpack tonight on Politics HQ. We're looking at expectations for the new administration, the incoming government of President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Do stay with us. This is Politics HQ. We'll go on a quick timeout. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion. Welcome back to Politics HQ and News Central Television, and we've been discussing the expectations of Nigerians from the new administration that will be birthed in a number of days. The administration will be led by President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And still on the panel for this all-important discussion, I have Mary Ogwiji, human rights lawyer and activist, joining us live from Abuja. I also have Ambassador Olusiji Aina, a board member, U.S. Africa Trade Council, joins us from Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos. And lastly on the panel, I have Deji Ajare, a public affairs analyst, joins us from the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Welcome back, lady and gentlemen. Now, Deji, government in Nigeria, political office in general, is often seen as a means to, enrich people. They see it as, oh, my time has arrived. It's my time to eat, to use that phrase. Now, government institutions often face challenges in serving the interests of ordinary Nigerians. Quite a number of them serve their own personal interests. They feel it's their time to enrich themselves. Now, from your perspective, what systemic changes or reforms should the Tinubu administration, the incoming Tinubu administration, implement to enhance the effectiveness and responsiveness of these institutions? Because if you look at all the countries like Singapore, Norway, it's the best minds that run the civil service. It's the engine that drives policies and nations. So what's your response? Hello, Deji, can you...
Essentially...
Yes, I can hear you now.
The problem of corruption in Nigeria is quite endemic. And if we are going to be very honest with ourselves, it is not going to go away very soon. However, a serious government will find ways of reducing it to its barest minimum, because it is opportunity that creates that, that makes corruption really endemic. So when you reduce the opportunities for corruption, particularly to be corrupt, particularly within the civil service, And how can you do this? By digitizing the systems there such that you reduce the human factor there. You implement comprehensive anti-corruption measures in digital forms in the civil service processes. That way, you will reduce corruption, you will reduce bottlenecks, you will also reduce the time that the processes take within the civil service. And it is also important to strengthen the anti-graft agencies. And I'm going to tell you without fear at all that look, our anti-graft agencies today, EFCC, ICPC, and
Hello, Deji, are you there? Okay, I think we just lost Deji Ajare. I would like to direct that question to Mary. Now, Mary, how do we make government institutions more responsive to the yearnings of the people? How do we make them do the job that they were put there, that they are put there for? Because you did earlier give an analysis of how things are very effective in the private sector that are run by the same Nigerians. So why is it that when it comes to government institutions, people expect lower standards? How can the incoming administration change that culture?
Okay. I think firstly, everything is centered on the rule of law. We need to actually make sure that the rule of law is maintained. And it starts by making sure that the institutions that ought to be independent are independent. For example, the judiciary. The judiciary is not independent enough to me. The executive and the legislature actually have a lot of influence on the judiciary. And you don't expect that one person, an arm of government pays you, an arm of government appoints you, an arm of government has everything that actually decides everything, the running of the judiciary, and still expect that that particular arm of government to be actually and absolutely independent the way it ought to be. And the judiciary, like they say, is the hope of the common man. And when it comes to interpretation of laws, when it comes to justice and the justice administration of justice, we all look up to the judiciary, so it needs to actually be independent. Then the checks and balances. Like I've been hearing, we are having consensus suggestions of consensus candidates now. It ought not to be so because every arm of government has to be independent of the other arm. And having one arm decide to, consent to actually elect persons in another arm of government, that's to show that they are already in a marriage.
Yeah, but Mary, permit me to come in here. I did speak to the spokesperson of the ruling All Progressive Congress, and I did raise the concerns about the independence of different arms of government. And he said, you know what, that they are the legislature and you have an executive does not mean they have to be antagonistic, that it's in the best interest of Nigerians that they align policy-wise so that they can give Nigerians their yearnings and the dividends of democracy, so to say. So do you agree with that line of argument?
It's aligning policy-wise does not necessarily mean that they must appoint. After all, we have rules, we have laws, we have rules, we have regulations that actually these arms of government actually follow. So you don't necessarily need to influence, because whether we like it or not, this arm of government, yes, they need to work together for the country to progress, but notwithstanding, we need them to also perform their checks and balance function for the country to also function, for them to also perform their functions maximally. Because you can't tell me that you actually help somebody to get into a particular position and that person would actually, check you properly the way it ought to be. So I actually don't don't accept that particular submission. And I feel we should build our institutions. I feel one of the reasons why a lot of persons are scared of our institutions being formidable is the fact that everybody sees, like you said earlier, you mentioned how the country, Nigeria, is actually at the bleak, but notwithstanding, we still have persons that are clamoring to actually still be presidents and still take positions, high political positions and appointed positions. And that's because to an extent we have made the political We have made the politics of this country very juicy. Ordinarily, politics is about service. And anybody that is coming to serve, knows that there is a whole lot of work. Nobody wants work. Because if they are really coming to work the way that they ought to work, they will not be clamoring to act as fighting to come and take this position. So in order to make people work and actually be patriotic based on the way they are claiming they are for fighting for this position, we need to have good checks and balances to keep them on their toes. If you are sure that you are taking these positions to do what you ought to do, then you should not be scared of checks. He who is guilty does not fear the law, or does not fear the long arm of the law. So I feel a lot of persons are scared of building these institutions because they are scared that at the end of it, when they are caught, it's just like falling down the tree. So when it's more like you are trying to straighten the axe, and you are scared that if you straighten the axe man, one day the tree is going to fall on you. So if you are not at the wrong side of,
you are not actually at
the wrong side of the law, you have nothing to fear, then there should be nothing there for you to build and to make sure that we have formidable institutions. And that is the big, once we have formidable institutions, I believe that the country will fall into place.
Thank you very much, Mary. I'd like to bring back Ambassador Aina into the conversation. Now, the Buhari administration, it's in its twilight. Now, reflecting on President Buhari's administration, what are the key lessons that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu should learn from the challenges and shortcomings experienced during the past almost 8 years? And how can he ensure a more effective and impactful leadership approach?
Oh, okay. The question is for me, right?
Yes. Do you want me to repeat the question, Ambassador?
Yes, please. I thought you were referring to Barrister, but that's okay.
Yes. Now, so I was saying the Buhari administration it's in its twilight. The administration will be handing over to that of President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu in a few days' time. So, what are the key lessons that the incoming president should learn from the challenges and shortcomings experienced during the past 8 years? And how can he ensure a more effective and impactful leadership approach? Or should Nigerians expect more of the same, since they both belong to the same political party, the All Progressives Congress?
All right. I think